as a result of my near-death experience, I have seen a couple of special skills develop that I've had all the way back to my early childhood, but they have come through in varying ways and varying degrees over the course of my lifetime. And one of them is the power of intuition that comes through and helps me to kind of know what's going to happen before it happens. And that came through to me in many instances and helped me in my life. The other side of those skills would be hearing from the other side when I needed assistance or help in some way. And one of those special stories that happened in my life was just in 2015. I had gone up to San Francisco, California with my husband to talk about my near-death experience. And we had driven up there from Santa Barbara. And on the way back home again, my husband was driving our car, and the roadway, freeway, comes from inland and it runs into the ocean, and it then parallels the ocean all the way down to Santa Barbara. It's called the Gaviota Coastline. So we had just come around the corner there at the Gaviota Coastline, and a big gust of wind hit the side of our car, and it was about 70 miles an hour. And it had been predicted that day that they would have gusts that big, and I had seen it on my phone earlier, but I'd forgotten about it until we got to that area. And so I was leaning back in my seat, and I had my feet up on the dashboard, and my husband was driving, and I watched as he struggled with the steering wheel while this gust of wind pushed against the side of our car, our van. And so I said, you know, would you like to slow down from 70 to 50? Because I think these gusts are pretty huge and we could lose control. And he said, okay. And so he slowed down to 50. And I was thinking we were okay then. So we were driving along, and about 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, in my right ear, I hear a voice, and it says, danger, big impact ahead, danger, big impact. And I felt freaked out. I put my feet on the floor. I sat my seat upright. I checked my seatbelt to make sure I was tight in my seat in case we were going to hit something. And then I realized I need to tell my husband that this danger is coming. So I said, Victor, you know how I sometimes hear from the other side? And he said, yes. And I said, I just heard a voice that said, danger, big impact ahead, danger, big impact. So I think we need to slow down more because something dangerous is up ahead. I think we need to do 30 miles an hour. And my husband looked over at me and said, Barbara, we're on the freeway. We can't do 30. And I said, let me just check behind us. Oh, there's no cars behind us. If a car comes up and approaches us, why don't you speed back up to 50? But let's do 30 so we'll have more reaction time if we see something in the roadway. And he said, oh, okay. So we went 30 miles an hour. About 10 minutes later, we came around a corner, and way up in the distance in the dark, there was a police car's lights, just one police car. So I get intuition, and I felt right here in my chest that that was where the danger was. And I became very heightened, and I was staring at this police car, and we were way distant from it. And as we approached it and we got closer and closer, the first weird thing that I noticed was that it wasn't parked off the freeway in the median. It was stopped in the slow lane, and there was no car in front of it, and there was no police officer anywhere near to be seen. And I thought, oh, there's something really wrong with this picture. And we were going 30 miles an hour. We had to change lanes into the fast lane to go around the police car. And as we were approaching it, we were about 50 feet behind the back of it. And all of a sudden, someone from the other side gripped my upper shoulders, and I felt the presence of their face right in front of my face, almost nose to nose, and they screamed, 10 miles an hour. And it scared me so abruptly to have that touch and that feeling and everything that I screamed 10 miles an hour at my husband. And he reacted by slowing down immediately from 30 to 10, so that when we were right next to the police car, we were doing 10 miles an hour. And just as we got a little bit past it, our lights finally lit up, what was in front of the police car by about 50 to 100 feet. It was a semi-truck that had fallen over on its side, so just the bottom of the truck was facing the 2 lanes and was off the freeway towards the ocean. So the cab was in the fast lane, middle of the truck in the slow lane, and the rest of the cab off to the side. And we were now in the fast lane doing 10 miles an hour, and my husband very carefully just veered off to the left-hand side and went into the gravel, was able to control his whole maneuver, didn't hit the guardrail, and went right around the front of the truck. And as he did, I was going into shock because this is very weird to have unfold. And on the far side of the truck, I looked over, and the police officer was climbing up the side of the truck to check on the status of the truck driver. Now, what we found out the next day was that the CHP had closed the highway behind us. That's why there was no traffic behind us that ever caught up to us. And we hadn't known that. We were the only car in between the closure and the accident. So without listening to the other side, without knowing that they exist and that they want to help me and everyone, I would have not given Victor that information, and we would have continued to drive at 50 miles an hour right into the bottom of the cab of that truck. The cab of that truck had 2 silver gas tanks on each side, one on each side. And I'm assuming that that would have been an explosion that would have taken out both the police officer, the truck driver, and Victor and I. So after I was heading down the freeway in silence, my husband was pretty much in shock over what he just watched happen, I was thanking the other side. And I thank them a lot for what you'd call synchronicities, but I don't believe are synchronicities. I believe it's the other side helping us all the way along our whole life. And as I was thanking and saying, I don't know if it was the police officer's life you were saving, or the truck driver's life, or Victor, my husband's life, or my life, but I thank you on behalf of all of us for intervening with this tonight. And I'm appreciative that you talk to me in my life, and I'm appreciative that you're always with me. So then, as I was going down the highway, my husband finally chimed in and said, Barbara, how is it that you're able to do that? He'd watched the whole thing unfold and just was in shock. And I calmly said, Victor, it's not me doing anything but listening and believing that they're there to help. It was them wanting to change the outcome of the situation, to keep one of us or all of us alive. So I believe that we all have time to go, and then there are times when we're not meant to go, that we have more purpose to do and more things that we need to accomplish. So at that evening, that night, they made a change in the situation, and they allowed us all to live. So I believe that if you understand that in your life, that you'll listen, that when you see something happen and you realize, oh, that changed your direction to a better situation, or you moved in a different direction and something else happened that would have, you would have had another outcome that was worse, you realize that it is a guidance from the other side, whether you want to call it God or the Creator or Buddha or your guardian angel or anything. It doesn't matter what term you use or what religion you're adhering to. There is a greater source that wants to help you. And if you listen and if you accept that fact, your life is improved in a lot of ways, both small and major.